Well, now it's official. Two-tier policing is now enshrined into the United Kingdom's sentencing guidelines and can no longer be denied. This is one of the most racist and anti-white moves by a UK government imaginable. Let's first take a look at the clip and then react to it afterwards.
She was repeatedly asked but refused to give an answer. So can she tell the country now? When will the court backlog begin to fall? By what date does her department forecast it falling? And why will she not take up the 2,500 additional sitting days offered time and time again by the Lady Chief Justice? And lastly, turning to the new sentencing guidelines that's been published alongside this statement, which will make a custodial sentence less likely for, and I quote, ethnic minorities, cultural minorities, and faith minority communities. Why is the Justice Secretary enshrining this double standard, this two-tier approach to sentencing? This is an inversion of the rule of law. We on this side of the House believe in equality under the law. Why doesn't she?
So state.
Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Secretary of State asked the question, how did we get here? I'll tell him how we got here. His administration and the 14 years they had in power and the absolute mess they made of the criminal justice system, a mess that this government is clearing up. I'm sorry to deprive him of what I'm sure he thought was a clever attack line on my recent visit to Texas. I can inform him I have in fact visited Manchester Prison. I did so during the February recess. And
please. I did say to the side, I do need to hear, so please.
And he should welcome us seeking to learn from a tough law and order state in America where they had the same problems that we inherited from his administration 20 years ago, and where they've embarked on criminal justice reform that has seen levels of reoffending a low level that we could only dream of thus far in this country. So he should seek to learn from other countries as we are doing. If his government had done so when they were in power, we wouldn't have such a big mess to clear up in the criminal justice system. He refers to courtrooms sitting empty. One of the reasons why so many of those courtrooms have been sitting empty is because his government, one of their last acts on leaving office, was to only fund 106,000 sitting days. I have lifted that amount. Today is a record number of Crown Court sitting days, the highest ever that will be funded by this Labour government. So more of those courtrooms are, of course, going to be put to use. He will also know that in order to run the system efficiently, there will always be some courtrooms not in use so that they can cope with the influxes of demand. That is the normal practice for how we run. But more courtrooms, as a result of this decision today, will be in use than was ever the case under his administration. He asks me what I have been doing and what is the plan. Well, let me tell him. When I first came into office, the first thing I did was increase the number of sitting days by 500. His government left office at 106,000. I increased it immediately. I then made a further allocation and increased again by another 2,000 before Christmas, making progress on dealing with the Crown Court's backlog and picking up the pieces of the mess that his government left behind. He'll know that the changes I made to Magistrates' Court sentencing powers also have freed up capacity in the Crown Courts, and we have increased funding for legal aid, criminal legal aid, by 92 million so that we have the money to underpin the system. That is action. That is an increase in sitting days in year and an unprecedented increase in sitting days for the next year. That's what this Labour government is delivering. And he will also know that even if we were sitting at the maximum judicial capacity, which he's right to refer to, the Lady Chief Justice has referenced in Parliament herself, even at maximum judicial capacity, that backlog is still going to rise. And that is because the demand coming into the system is fast outstripping the pace at which cases are being disposed of. And so knowing that, it would be unconscionable if I stood before this House and behaved as if resources alone were going to fix the problem. That is why Sir Brian Leveson is considering once-in-a-generation reform of our Crown Courts. It's the combination of the steps I've already taken, the funding I've now allocated, and the review that will lead to once-in-a-generation reform. That's what a plan looks like to fix the mess his government left behind. It's a plan that they could have done when they were in government. They failed to do so, and now they carp from the sidelines when somebody else is actually getting on with the job. And then let me just say finally, as somebody who's of an ethnic minority background myself, I do not stand for any differential treatment before the law for anyone of any kind, and there will never be a two-tier sentencing approach under my watch or under this Labour government.
There was a lot of talking there, but of course she failed to answer the question in any real sense. The reality of these new sentencing guidelines is that if you are white British, you are more likely to go to jail than if you are not. The reason for this is that being white means you are less likely to receive a pre-sentence report, which takes into account all the factors surrounding your crime and generally makes a custodial sentence less likely. What an utter disgrace! Like the video if you agree and share your thoughts below.